All life on Earth, from ecosystems to human civilization, is vulnerable to a changing climate. Scientific evidence now shows that the current human-caused global warming of 1.1 degrees Celsius is increasingly impacting nature and people's lives everywhere, despite efforts to adapt to the changing climate. More frequent and severe climate extreme events, such as heat waves over land and in the ocean, droughts and flooding, have caused widespread and pervasive impacts to ecosystems, people, cities and infrastructure, and limit the chances of a livable future for all. There is new knowledge that human-induced climate change caused these destructive impacts or makes them more likely.
This report is important because I think it really underscores the fact that the scientific evidence is now unequivocal. It's clear that climate change is impacting on the well-being of human societies, but also on the well-being of our planet. This report really brings us a new message, though, that those two things are not separate, that there's a very intimate relationship between our well-being, the well-being of our planet, and the forces that are driving climate change and the resulting impacts and responses that we may have to that challenge.
Since the last assessment report, the scientific evidence has increased and emphasized, based on observations of impacts, how the ecosystems and human society are changing under the influence of climate change. We see the losses and damages, and on both sides we have specific examples that indicate the underpinning mechanisms, and we are learning from that also for our projections as global warming is proceeding, what to expect for the future and what the future losses and damages will be if climate change cannot be stopped.
The extent and magnitude of climate change impacts are larger for each additional fraction of warming than estimated in previous assessments. So are the risks projected for the future. The impacts involve severe and widespread disruptions to nature and to society, reducing our ability to grow nutritious food or provide clean drinking water.
The poorest communities are the ones that are strongest hit by climate change, as they're least able to cope with the growing impacts. Our assessment indicates that there are between 3.3 and 3.6 billion people who live in such hotspots. These are spread across parts of Africa, South Asia, South and Central America, small islands, and the Arctic. Climate change acts like a stress multiplier in these regions, where people have limited access to clean drinking water, to sanitation, to health facilities or education. The livelihoods of people are also strongly dependent on climate-sensitive activities such as farming and fishing. They have limited access to funding, limited accountability from governments, and limited trust, therefore, in governments. Climate impacts are also felt differentially by men and women, as they have different roles and responsibilities in society.
This report shows that climate change is impacting every ecosystem across the globe, from high mountain ecosystems to the deep ocean, from tropical coral reefs all the way to Arctic ice-driven ecosystems. We see the fingerprint of climate change across all of these systems. One of the other things that the report really shows is that extreme events are increasing and their effects are rapidly changing ecosystems across the globe. So marine heat waves on land, storm events, these are driving changes to the ecosystems and species that we rely on. This is pushing species towards polar regions, it's pushing species to higher, cooler altitudes or down into the deeper, cool waters. And because of that, it has cascading impacts across ecosystems, but also people's livelihoods and societies that depend on the services that these ecosystems provide. And as we approach the limits of what species and ecosystems can tolerate, we risk crossing what we call tipping points, these critical places in the system where returning to previous conditions where recovery is less possible.
Climate change impacts are magnified in cities, where more than half of the world's population lives today. Heat waves amplify urban heat islands and air pollution in cities that affect people's health. Critical infrastructure within settlements, such as transportation, water, sanitation, and energy systems, have been compromised by extreme weather events. Cities and settlements by the sea are specifically impacted by climate hazards. They are at the front line of climate change, being directly exposed to interacting climate and non-climate coastal hazards, such as sea level rise and destruction of local ecosystems that previously protected people living along the coast.
Multiple climate hazards are also occurring simultaneously, with often cascading impacts. These impacts are becoming increasingly complex and challenging to manage. How these will affect nature and people depends on the speed and level of warming and how we adapt.
The Working Group 2 report of the IPCC shows that the impact of climate change is worsened by destruction of habitats, also unsustainable use of natural resources, deforestation, and growing urbanization and population growth trends. The report also found that for the African region, increasing urbanization is an important compounding factor for climate change. For the coastal areas of Africa, especially the low-lying coastal areas, population is increasing rapidly because of the economic opportunities that the coastal environment presents. Many people moving into the coastal areas live in informal settlements, marginal areas, and high-risk areas. And this has implications because the threats of climate change is compounded and the ecosystems and the people that rely on them are affected.
El reporte muestra que tenemos acciones de adaptación importantes en diferentes partes del planeta, pero los avances no son similares en diferentes regiones y de hecho no estamos haciendo suficientes esfuerzos para alcanzar los niveles de adaptación necesitados por los niveles actuales de calentamiento. Eso resulta en vacíos de adaptación importantes, especialmente en regiones de bajos ingresos como mi propio país, Guatemala, donde vemos barreras importantes que vienen no solamente de aspectos financieros, sino también de aspectos institucionales. La buena noticia es que sí tenemos acciones de adaptación que podemos hacer para reducir nuestros niveles de vulnerabilidad, pero la efectividad de estas acciones dependerá de los niveles de calentamiento. Por lo tanto, tenemos que tener tanto adaptación como mitigación trabajando mano a mano.
We also have evidence of what's called maladaptation. These are adaptation actions that result in unintended consequences. For example, coastal ecosystems that are destroyed through the construction of dikes and seawalls, or climate-related risks that are transferred to other regions or groups in society. Even greenhouse gas emissions can be increased through maladaptation. Our report shows that Indigenous peoples, ethnic minorities and disadvantaged groups, such as low-income households and those living in informal settlements, are some of the most affected by maladaptation. Unfortunately, this reinforces and entrenches already existing inequalities.
The report shows that nature offers significant yet untapped potential to reduce climate risks, to deal with the causes of climate change and to improve people's lives and livelihoods. However, nature needs space and protection to be able to provide those services.
By protecting and restoring 30 to 50% of our world's ecosystems on land and in the ocean, we help plants and animals build climate resilience. Nature, in turn, can help us regulate the climate, give us clean water, control pests and diseases, pollinate our crops, and provide nutritious food. Cities also provide a global opportunity to advance adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable development simultaneously. Using different adaptation strategies such as nature-based and engineering approaches together, or providing social safety nets, can generate wider benefits for health, food security, and ecosystems. However, investing in nature and cities alone isn't enough. To secure a healthy, livable planet for everyone, we need to transform our way of life fundamentally. Taking action now gives us the best chance of success.
Where this report is different is that it puts humankind into context and emphasizes that we cannot abandon this context, because it emphasizes the relationship between three systems: climate, human society, and biodiversity, and indicates how all these systems influence each other. Human society causes climate change, it causes biodiversity loss, and these interactions that are underpinning this are also the source of the solutions. With modifying these interactions, we can move into a sustainability space.
So I think one of the important advancements is not only talking about risk, but looking at the solutions that we have available to respond to that risk. But a list of solutions is not adequate. What we need to be able to do is determine the feasibility and effectiveness of those solutions and how they might be drawn into practice. And so it really gives practitioners guidelines about where is the best place to act. We've got very clear pointers, for example, to the protection of ecosystems and activities in cities as ways that we might be able to change the world.
The science is clear. Any delay in concerted global climate action means missing a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future.
This report is a dire warning about the consequences of inaction. It shows that climate change is a grave and mounting threat to our well-being and a healthy planet. Our actions today will shape how people adapt to climate change and how nature responds to increasing climate risks. It recognizes the interdependence of climate, biodiversity, people, and it integrates natural, social, and economic sciences more strongly than earlier IPCC assessments. It emphasizes the urgency of immediate and more ambitious action to address climate risks. Half measures are no longer an option.
IPCC reports provide the most up-to-date science related to climate change for policymakers to inform their decisions on developing climate-related policies. Hundreds of scientists worldwide have volunteered their time and expertise to produce this report. IPCC reports go through an extensive review process by experts and government to achieve the highest quality. This process makes them policy relevant and policy neutral.